Bonjour tout le monde. Today is going to be something a little bit different, or kind of perhaps the same if you've been a long-time subscriber. It is currently 6:43 at night, so wearing the red light glasses, and I have prepared my remarks for today, so you know it's going to be a tight one. So let's just get into it. I'd like to start this video with a hot take, which is that there's a subtle distinction between what it means to be a geek and what it means to be a nerd. So people can be one or the other. Someone could be both a geek and a nerd, or someone could be neither a geek nor a nerd. And as with any labels used to describe personality structure, there are seldom any absolutes, of course. However, I think what it means to be geeky and what it means to be nerdy often gets conflated to a point where it leads to social missteps. So I'm going to frame what I think is the difference between a geek and a nerd in what could be described as Freudian terms. So I first have to give a long-winded disclaimer intro, but please bear with me. So the word on the street is that Sigmund Freud has been thoroughly discredited. Nevertheless, the writings, the work, and the remarkable mind of Sigmund Freud have had an outstanding impact on society and culture. Psychoanalysis and psychoanalysts are still present in today's landscape in a niche way, if not the same elite, highfalutin way they were in Freud's own time. For instance, if you have a brain tumor, you see a neurosurgeon. If you have Parkinson's disease, you see a neurologist. You don't need a mental health diagnosis to see a talk therapist, and I think, as a matter of fact, everyone could benefit from talk therapy or learning how you could use concepts from things like cognitive behavioral therapy that you can do by yourself to live a better life. And there's nothing wrong with you or shameful about doing that. Psychologists determine whether a diagnosis should be attributed or is appropriate at all, and psychologists thereby design treatment plans based upon behavioral intervention. Psychiatrists have two modalities of tools: language and, more importantly, pharmacotherapy or medication. On the other hand, non-academic psychoanalysts remain a distinct category from all of the above and are distinguished by the depth of their methods in the context of talk therapy. The early days of the endeavor of psychoanalysis started by Sigmund Freud were influenced, among other things, by the practice of hypnosis. Building upon his early results, Freud took his ideas and ran with them, and for this you can't exactly blame him. A close reading of the original writings of the primary sources of revered mathematical and scientific results that today are regarded as incontrovertible truths, such as those of Maxwell and Einstein, reveals that even the greatest minds pioneering at the frontier of understanding and insight still don't always stick the perfect landing. Sigmund Freud is no different, and the vulgar stereotypical reputation of Freud that comes from his shortcomings enables his detractors. Bringing up Freud often involves the image of a coked-up, cigar-smoking old German guy in a tweed suit talking about poop and making your mom jokes. Indeed, Freud really once said, "So I gave my lecture yesterday. Despite a lack of preparation, I spoke quite well and without hesitation, which I ascribed to the cocaine I had taken beforehand. I told about my discoveries in brain anatomy, all very difficult things that the audience certainly didn't understand, but all that matters is that they get the impression that I understand it." And at that point, it's game over for Freud with many of you. However, modern psychology owes many debts to an early collaborator and mentee of Freud named Carl Jung. Psychology a la Jung is in many ways the materialist reformulation of the movement originally initiated by Freud. It really was Freud in the West who first pinpointed and emphasized the role of the subconscious and unconscious in understanding and assisting ourselves with our troubled minds. When you read Freud today, you can skip over the parts where he addresses contemporary controversies and develops grand metaphysical schemes and focus on his nascent drive theory. Freud's impact on popular culture is ineffable. People don't commonly talk about the subjective experience of their interior mental theater in terms of the enrichment or depletion of ligand subtypes in their noradrenergic and serotonergic pathways, impacting the function of their hippocampus and amygdala. People do, however, still speak about the id, the ego, and the superego, even if it's tongue-in-cheek. It's also in vogue nowadays for therapy to involve explorations of what one deems to be their childhood trauma, and the techniques of such approaches are the result of a dialectic rooted in Freud's original ideas that has been gradually refined into its present state. The terms id, ego, and superego were not jargon terms for Freud, but translated colloquially to it, me, and above me, respectively. The id is an entirely unconscious part of the mind that contains primitive drives, impulses, pre-rational strivings, and wish-fear combinations. The ego has both conscious and unconscious aspects and often involves the interplay of the subconscious percolating between these facets of reality. The Freudian ego is a set of functions that adapt to life's contingencies and find ways that are acceptable within one's family and culture to handle id strivings, thus mediating the demands of the id and the constraints of reality and ethics. The superego is the part of the self that oversees things, especially from a moral perspective. A concept closely related to the superego comes from the radical neo-Freudian Jacques Lacan, and that concept is the big other. The big other has two aspects. One aspect of the big other is the secret order of things, such as divine reason, fate, or whatever is controlling our destiny. That is to say that the big other is all of the agents which guarantee the meaning of what we are doing. The big other's second, more pressing aspect is the order of appearances. This includes things which are not just simply prohibited, but things that should not happen for the big other. And here I defer to Slavoj Zizek because I think his analysis puts it best.
A supreme example of this agency of the big other as the agency of appearance is the prattling busybody in David Lean's masterpiece, The Brief Encounter. At the very beginning of the film, the two lovers, Celia Johnson and Trevor Howard, arranged for their last meeting in a cafeteria of a small train station.
Laura, what a lovely surprise.
Oh, darling.
My dear, I've been shopping till I'm dropping. My feet are nearly off, my throat's parched. I thought of having tea at Spindle's, but I was terrified of losing the train. Oh, dear.
Oh, this is Dr. Harvey.
How do you do? Would you be a perfect day and get me my cup of tea? I really don't think I could drag my poor old bones over to the counter.
Why is this situation so interesting? Because on the one hand, we cannot but experience this annoying lady as a brutal intruder.
There's your train.
Yes, I know.
Oh, aren't you coming with us?
No, I go in the opposite direction. My practice is in Shirley.
Oh, I see.
I'm a general practitioner at the moment.
Dr. Harvey's going out to Africa next week.
Oh, how thrilling.
Instead of the two lovers being allowed at least their final moments alone, they have to maintain the appearances that nothing is happening between them, that they are just acquaintances, and so on and so on.
He'll have to run or he'll miss it. He's got to get right over to the other platform.
This precisely is the function of the big other. We need for our stability a figure of big other for whom we maintain appearances.
And I arrived at the station with exactly half a minute to spare. My dear, I flew.
But are things really as simple as that? The next scene, the scene of Celia Johnson, totally desperate. She knows that she will never again see her lover.
Yes, he's a nice creature.
Have you known him long?
No, not very long. I hardly know him at all, really.
Well, my dear, I've always had a passion for doctors.
Then we hear the line of Celia Johnson's thought.
I wish I could trust you. I wish you were a wise, kind friend. Instead of a gossiping acquaintance I've known casually for years and never particularly cared for.
What is the nature of this deadlock of Celia Johnson? She is split between the two figures in the film of the big other. On the one hand, it's her husband, the ideal listener, but it's out of question to confess to him.
Dear Fred, there's so much that I want to say to you. You're the only one in the world with enough wisdom and gentleness to understand.
Wild horses wouldn't drag me away from England and home and all the things I'm used to. I mean, one has one's roots after all, hasn't one?
Oh, yes, one has one's roots.
On the other hand, you have here this stupid person who is available as a confessor, but there is not even an elementary trust.
I wish you'd stop talking. I wish you'd stop prying and trying to find things out. I wish you were dead. No, I don't mean that. That was silly and unkind. But I wish you'd stop talking.
My dear, all her hair came out, and she said the social life was quite horrid. Provincial, you know, and very nouveau riche.
Oh, Dolly.
What's the matter, dear? Are you feeling ill again?
So that's the tragedy of our predicament. In order to fully exist as individuals, we need the fiction of a big other. There must be an agency which, as it were, registers our predicament, an agency where the truth of ourselves will be inscribed, accepted, an agency to which to confess. There is no big other. There may be a virtual big other to whom you cannot confess. There may be a real other, but it's never the virtual one. We are alone.
A more rudimentary way that I think about superego and the big other is that society, culture, and ideology provide a constellation of points through which we interpolate our identities. When I say, quote, interpolation, unquote, in this context, you really can still think of this like drawing a least squares regression line through a scatter plot, but the guiding principle isn't minimizing the sum of squared differences between the actual data points and the predicted values on the regression line. The guiding principle isn't just that you are the subject of an ethical moral order, but you are also subject to the pleasures and desires that sustain your apparent freedom, and this act of interpolation is the realization of your identity. This, for me, is the core distinction between what it means to be a geek and what it means to be a nerd. Being a geek is subject to a slew of cultural data points that can be deconvolved from the essence of what it means to be a nerd. These momentary preferences defining what it means to be a geek provide social scaffolding for cooperating with other geeks. For instance, geeks will build their identities upon preferences such as Xbox or PlayStation, Marvel or DC, or being a furry. Without a greater vision for the meaning of their lives, they identify themselves as a projection of characters from shows like The Big Bang Theory and play out social narratives that have the scope and complexity of a 30-minute long sitcom episode. Geeks often struggle to have empathetic interactions, but excel at systematic, ordered, and structured interactions. As such, they tend towards activities including building Lego models and playing board games. To be clear, neither nerds nor geeks are traditionally upheld as models of reproductive success. To me, a nerd tends to be a genuinely competent and intellectual individual, if not at the cost of being unorthodox and socially awkward. For example, a nerd might have deep expertise in the actual physics of the Big Bang and cosmological models, or ability as a computer engineer, semiconductor manufacturing, 3D graphics design, or have high mechanical aptitude. Such a nerdy person can, but does not necessarily have to build their identity upon dressing like they're still in middle school, only eating chicken nuggets and mac and cheese, and playing Minecraft. Like I said at the beginning of this video, the categories of geek and nerd for me are not mutually exclusive nor all-encompassing. Nevertheless, I personally take offense to being called a geek because I am highly averse to the social constellation of the objects of desire that geeks seem to cherish as their raison d'être. There's nothing inherently wrong with liking geek stuff, and I'm willing to be friends with people who identify as geeks so long as I like them as a person beyond their geeky interests. However, I personally try my best to construct my personality in a way that is detached from being built upon things like playing video games and calling that a lifestyle. That's all I'm saying. So, with the long-winded introduction aside, this is all to preface that what I really want to focus on today is a trope analysis of the original Star Wars trilogy, specifically the relationship of Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. A dictionary definition of a trope is a significant or recurrent theme, a motif. The Google definition of the word trope used in a sentence is, the scene echoes a common sci-fi trope. A deeper definition of a trope expands the word to describe a plot device, character type, or figurative language that creates deeper meaning and can act as a storytelling shortcut that provides a familiar pattern for audiences. I'm going to bring up several examples of tropes in my interpretation of the relationship between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. From what I said in the introduction, you shouldn't be surprised that I think Dungeons & Dragons is cringe as f***, but D&D is the origin of the now more broadly used moral alignment chart. For those of you who are sexually active, a moral alignment chart is a 3x3 grid where each entry is the composite of good versus evil along the vertical axis and law versus chaos on the horizontal axis. The 9 entries include, for example, lawful good, true neutral, and chaotic evil. Darth Vader can be categorized on a moral alignment chart as lawful evil, as evidenced by quotes such as when he says to Luke during their duel at the end of Episode 5,
"Join me, and I will complete your training. With our combined strength, we can end this destructive conflict and bring order to the galaxy."
I'll never join you!
This quote implies that Darth Vader doesn't seek chaos, but rather envisions bringing about a different reality of what ought to be, that is, order to the galaxy. This sentiment is recapitulated after the big reveal that Darth Vader is Luke's father when Darth Vader says,
"Join me, and together we can rule the galaxy as father and son."
This sets up Luke's character to be essentially playing out the Passion of the Christ. The low-level trope at play here is the hero's journey, which is exemplified by the narrative and character arc in Homer's Odyssey. The hero's journey begins with a call to adventure, crossing into a threshold that begins the transformation, facing a series of challenges and temptations, the low point of the abyss, followed by the transformation, atonement, and finally the hero's return. It's difficult to overstate how broad the template of the hero's journey is for storytelling, and that it is both general and rich is why I call it low level. Above this layer of the hero's journey in Star Wars is the relationship between Luke Skywalker and his father Darth Vader. Father-son tropes can take on various guises, but these tropes often ultimately motivate the hero's call to adventure to be serious business and it's personal. Serious business is the escalation of conflict beyond a mere flame war or ship-to-ship combat. A great example of serious business being invoked is in the "You're entering a world of pain" scene from The Big Lebowski. At the bowling alley, Walter, who is played by John Goodman, gets angry at Smokey for going over the line, which is a foul and breaks bowling league rules.
Over the line!
Huh?
I'm sorry, Smokey. You were over the line. That's a foul.
Bullshit. Mark at 8, dude.
Excuse me. Mark at 0, next frame. Smokey, this is not Nam. This is bowling. There are rules.
Hey, Walter, come on. It's just, hey, man, it's Smokey, so his toe slipped over a little, you know? It's just a game, man.
This is a league game. This determines who enters the next round robin. Am I wrong?
Yeah, but I wasn't...
Am I wrong?
Yeah, but I wasn't over. Give me the marker, dude. I'm marking an 8.
Smokey, my friend, you're entering a world of pain.
Walter, man.
You mark that frame an 8, you're entering a world of pain.
I'm not...
A world of pain.
Look, dude, this is your partner.
Is the whole world gone crazy?
Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rules? Mark at 0!
They're calling the cops, man. Put the piece away.
Mark at 0!
Walter, put the piece away.
Walter?
You think I'm around here? Mark at 0!
In The Big Lebowski, Walter's over-the-top reaction brandishing a pistol when someone committed a line foul in a local bowling league game contrasts with the dude's chill, laid-back persona. For Walt to take bowling as serious business leads to the serious business trope being a silly reason for war, and centering the entire narrative upon bowling as serious business rather than a gag in a scene could lead the audience to be disappointed by the motive. When the parents or guardians of the hero are compromised in the beginning of the narrative, motives run deeper than simply opposing goals. The struggles end up hitting closer to home and heart because the call knows where you live, war comes home, and blood is thicker than water. This combination of serious business and the hero facing trauma involving parental or guardian tension often leads to the emergence of the it's personal trope. When it's personal with a parent or guardian, and if that parent/guardian is the father, there are a few possible tropes that this can play out through, but the essence of the tropes is ultimately revenge. This revenge is ultimately towards whatever disrupted the relationship between the father and son in the first place, which can be another character who is the villain or even the father himself. Therefore, one possibility is the "you killed my father" trope, which is the classic line from Inigo Montoya in The Princess Bride.
My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Stop saying that! Oh.
The more angsty version is what's played out in the original Star Wars trilogy, which is the trope, "Luke, I am your father." The anguish that the hero experiences, Luke Skywalker in the Star Wars case, is heightened by the fact that Obi-Wan Kenobi, the mentor, originally told Luke that the villain, Darth Vader, killed Luke's father. But really, the big reveal is that the main antagonist is Darth Vader, who is Luke Skywalker's father, and as such, the original Star Wars trilogy arguably drew up this trope better than anyone. The character tensions at this point are already within the scope of the "it's personal" trope, so the resolution, whether explicitly realized or not, often falls squarely on the hero themselves. Namely, this is something he's got to do himself. The hero has to do it themselves partly because the transformation and atonement is central to their journey, the hero's journey. The hero has to be the one to vanquish the villain because only the hero can do it correctly, and only the hero can fully experience the triumph over the villain in doing so. To recap, the tropes are building up at this point like layers of a pyramid. At the base, we have the hero's journey, built up to "it's personal," which props up "Luke, I am your father." At the pinnacle of the trope pyramid, if you will, this leads us to now two possibilities of how "this is something he's got to do himself" plays out. One possibility is patricide. The hero kills the father. The other possibility is more subtle and emotionally compelling, which is where the hero makes the not-so-different remark. This second possibility is more compelling partly because the audience can be almost anticipating the first possibility where the hero kills their own father. But when the hero doesn't, the audience's expectations are thwarted. However, the audience isn't disappointed by this because this narrative arc invites the audience to contemplate the hero's decision to spare the villain. The complexity of the ethical dimension of the narrative is also heightened by the hero being just a hair's breadth away from villainy in traversing this plot arc. Now, let's bring it back to Star Wars and make this more concrete. I already mentioned how at the end of Episode 5, the "Luke, I am your father" trope is now in full effect. In Episode 6, Luke embarks on the Passion of the Christ, starting around when he surrenders to Darth Vader. There is no Judas Iscariot here because a Judas character who betrays the hero, leading the hero to begin carrying their cross unto their crucifixion, could arguably overshadow the moral gravity of the hero themselves. By surrendering himself, Luke voluntarily shoulders the responsibility of fulfilling his destiny. He is able to confront temptation directly by going within a hair's breadth away from villainy, and he reinforces to the rebels that this is something he's got to do himself. Luke juxtaposes the external moral conflict back onto Darth Vader himself when they have their initial exchange during Luke's surrender.
The Emperor has been expecting you.
I know, Father.
So, you have accepted the truth.
I've accepted the truth that you were once Anakin Skywalker, my father.
This implicitly reveals the internal moral conflict and denial for Darth Vader.
That name no longer has any meaning for me.
It is the name of your true self you've only forgotten. I know there is good in you. The Emperor hasn't driven it from you fully. That was why you couldn't destroy me?
It's worth noting at this point a subtle difference in language that will emerge between how Darth Vader and the Emperor talk about and to Luke. The Emperor, on the one hand, often talks about killing Luke, which, although it eliminates the threat of his active agency against the dark side, it raises the possibility of Luke becoming a martyr whose death galvanizes the rebels. Darth Vader, on the other hand, talks about destroying Luke, which foreshadows that Darth Vader and Luke share a common moral ground, but that the difference between Luke biases Darth Vader, and this invigorates Darth Vader's own internal moral conflict. This was seen at the end of Episode 5 when Darth Vader says,
"Don't make me destroy you."
In Episode 6, during his surrender, Luke toes the line even closer.
I will not turn, and you'll be forced to kill me.
If that is your destiny.
Search your feelings, Father. You can't do this. I feel the conflict within you. Let go of your hate.
It is too late for me, son.
Then my father is truly dead.
The final lightsaber duel begins when the Emperor tells Luke that all of his rebel friends are dead, and the Emperor eggs Luke on to kill him to complete joining the dark side. At this point, Luke is truly a hair's breadth away from villainy and in a situation where this is something he's got to do himself. The ensuing duel is, in a Freudian sense, phallus versus phallus to see who will succeed in castrating the other. At one point, Luke makes an explicit recognition of Darth Vader's internal moral conflict.
Your thoughts betray you, Father. I feel the good in you, the conflict.
Which, once again, Darth Vader represses through denial.
There is no conflict.
And Luke reveals his earlier bluff during his surrender, going forth like a lamb unto slaughter.
You couldn't bring yourself to kill me before, and I don't believe you'll destroy me now.
You underestimate the power of the dark side. If you will not fight, then you will meet your destiny.
Now, Luke is unarmed and hiding from Darth Vader, who is stalking around looking for him, lightsaber drawn, and Luke is officially in the abyss. Luke's greatest struggle isn't confronting the Emperor and Darth Vader in conversation, and it isn't due to a lack of ability in the lightsaber duel. Sigmund Freud returns to the chat, and the deepest depth of Luke's temptation is mental and emotional, which occurs when Darth Vader apparently reads Luke's thoughts and discerns that Luke has a twin sister. This causes Luke to lash out at Darth Vader, cutting off Darth Vader's right hand, and now we have finally arrived at the pinnacle of the Trope pyramid. Emperor Palpatine invites Luke to fulfill his destiny by joining the dark side, and what occurs next is one of my favorite moments in all of cinema. Luke is positioned to kill the father, but instead, the shot tightens in as Luke looks at his own robotic, prosthetic right hand, which Darth Vader had previously cut off at the end of Episode 5. The shot cuts to an up-close of Darth Vader's now severed robotic prosthetic right hand, then cuts back to Luke, who sighs and casts away his lightsaber before saying,
Never. I'll never turn to the dark side. You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Luke has just symbolically saved the father from the belly of the whale. An alternative moment where this trope surfaces could have been perhaps what happens in The Lion King. Simba had initially dodged his responsibility following the death of his father and went off to be a boy forever in Neverland, eating bugs and insects with a mongoose and a warthog, no Tinkerbells necessary. 420 blaze it Hakuna Matata. Nala tries to appeal to him to return to the pride, but Simba doesn't give a shit. But Rafiki, the wise spiritual baboon, corners Simba with unanswerable questions in a sort of quasi-Buddhist Zen koan sort of way.
Who are you? The question is, who are you?
I thought I knew. Now I'm not so sure.
Well, I know who you are. Shh, come here. It's a secret.
Enough already. What is that supposed to mean anyway?
Eventually, Rafiki leads Simba to a reflection pool. This is Simba's abyss. Simba stares past his reflection into the void, and the image of the great ancestral figure representing who he could become emerges, the image of the Great Father. Instead of calling it destiny, in The Lion King, Simba is told to take his place in the circle of life. Another alternative moment where this trope emerges is in Pinocchio. In spite of the presence of his conscience, Jiminy Cricket, Pinocchio defies the wishes of his father, Geppetto. Geppetto wished upon a star which serves as the metaphorical manifestation of the highest purity and good he can conceptualize, and in so doing aimed at a star in all of its possibility when he created Pinocchio. Geppetto aspired for Pinocchio to be something autonomous and real. Instead, Pinocchio joins Stromboli's puppet show, where he's given a plate to stand on and someone else is pulling the strings. Pinocchio subsequently becomes a liar and a jackass. Pinocchio escapes being sold into downright slave labor, and upon returning home, Pinocchio finds out that Geppetto had set out to sea in search for Pinocchio, but got swallowed by a gigantic whale and was now trapped in its belly. Pinocchio dies, saving Geppetto from the belly of the whale, but is resurrected for having proven himself brave, truthful, and unselfish. Now, back to Star Wars. Luke Skywalker has just had his "I'm just like you" moment instead of killing the father, but he isn't out of the woods yet. Emperor Palpatine starts to force electrocute Luke, and we are at the pinnacle of the Passion of the Christ when Luke cries out, in Matthew chapter 4, Jesus is tempted in the wilderness by the devil, and the second temptation goes that the devil took Jesus to either a very tall mountain or the highest point of the temple of the holy city, and the devil says to Jesus, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He will command His angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone."
I commend my spirit, Father, into your hands. Why have you forsaken me? In your eyes forsaken me. In your thoughts forsaken me. In your heart forsaken me. Oh.
Luke's cries for help from Darth Vader could be interpreted as him giving in to the temptation to join the dark side, but I think this is a shallow, if not incorrect, analysis. Luke is crying out, as in Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me?" which is also the cry of Jesus during the 9th hour of his crucifixion in both Matthew chapter 27, verse 46, and Mark chapter 15, verse 33, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. For theologians such as G.K. Chesterton, at the climax of the Passion of the Christ, even Jesus himself experiences a moment of atheism, and without this singular moment, there is no divine human moral redemption. As a reminder, Darth Vader is a formidable character. His debut in Episode 4 included picking up a low-rank cohort with one hand by the neck and throwing him against the wall. The introduction to Darth Vader the character also included the infamous Force choke.
Don't try to frighten us with your sorcerer's ways, Lord Vader. Your sad devotion to that ancient religion has not helped you conjure up the stolen data tapes, or given you clairvoyance enough to find the rebels' hidden fort.
Darth Vader witnesses his son Luke being crucified and then intervenes, not by picking Emperor Palpatine up with the Force, but Darth Vader uses his own human strength to cast the Emperor into the core of the Death Star. Luke then goes shoulder to shoulder with Darth Vader and rescues his father from the Death Star. Whereas when Luke said,
I am a Jedi, like my father before me,
and Luke is thus symbolically saving his father, carrying him from the Death Star is the physical embodiment of saving his father from the belly of the whale. But Vader is about to die, and so instead of catching his father with his pants down and castrating the father, Luke removes Vader's mask, the embodiment of fear and death, and Vader looks upon his son with his own eyes. No longer is there the booming voice of James Earl Jones, and Vader is no longer hiding the whites of his eyes that human primates are wired to pay attention to in order to track other human primates' gaze and infer intentionality to better cooperate, and then Darth Vader dies. On a final note, this father-son resolution is in contrast to that of Jango and Boba Fett. After the death of Jango Fett, Boba becomes the mask of the father. However, Boba is not a Jedi, and in a literary sense, therefore is not the real deal in terms of concretizing the moral conflict at the core of the narrative of Star Wars. So, I just wanted to throw together a simple, lighthearted video for you guys this weekend. I have a lot of other video ideas, just not a lot of free CPU cycles lately. But I hope to have more technical math and science videos out soon, if not early next year. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. AnthonyMakesVideos.com. Peace.